With the December festivities come unplanned spending. And come the month of January, the same old out-of-budget and borrowing trend starts all over again for some consumers. And with 10 days to Christmas, we are now joined by financial planner Bartho De Vries to guide us through this very hectic month. Bartho, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Now, the last 2 years were quite financially strenuous for South Africans, given the impacts of COVID-19. Are we still splurging during Christmas time?
100%. At the moment, the biggest problem that we do have is that we come from COVID-19, we've come from a lockdown. After that, people have started coming out of that, and so what's happening is this spending spree that happens in December. And unfortunately, we all know that what happens after a whole 12 months of working and you're going on leave is that we find that budgets are just thrown out the window, and kind of you tap into any resource you can. And then the thing that gets spent on is credit cards, which then has to be paid back in January, and so definitely we're seeing a big spending spree in December.
This behavior of this December spending spree, where could we trace it back to? I mean, you say now with people coming out of COVID-19, there seems to be some kind of relief, but we've seen it for so many years before that. Is there a particular time, and are there particular demographics or classes that we can ascertain this type of behavior to?
No, I don't think there's a demographic or a class. I think it just happens all over. I've always said if there's 20,000 rand in your account, or 50,000 or 10,000 at the end of the month of December, you've got nothing left. And it's just because there's no plan in place. I often find that, when you sit with someone and you put a proper plan in place, they say, this is what we're going to be saving for our December holidays. And I've got my other structures in place of my retirement, of my education savings, of my holiday savings, all of these type of structures. If you have that in place from the beginning of the year, then suddenly the December spending is just what you've put in place already. So it's more about sitting with someone experienced enough to put a plan in place for you, so that when December comes, you're spending the money that you should be spending in December, not spending the money that you shouldn't, such as your kids' education or your kind of retirement savings, or you really struggling in January to kind of make ends meet, or that you incur extra debt. You kind of extend your credit limit on your accounts, or just overdo it in December.
I mean, you made mention earlier on that quite often it's the credit card that gets overused during the December period. Come January, you need to pay it off. But it's not only the month of January where you start feeling the pinch, but in actual fact it's the 10, 11 months of the following year where you're now trying to find your feet.
Sure.
How detrimental is this behavior?
The problem that we often find with credit card or any debt that you incur is that many people don't pay that off ever. You kind of just sit in this limbo of in your credit card, out your credit card, in your credit card, out your credit card. And so it really impacts your financial planning or your retirement planning or anything of that, because the credit card debt, obviously you're paying an interest on that. And so if you're paying 20% or 19% or whatever the case would be percentage on your credit card, you're always going to be in this red, in this deficit, start of the year, end of the year, the next year, etc., etc. So it's imperative that you kind of mitigate that pay the credit card off, and then cut that card up to say, I'm not going to spend on this again. I'm going to now put a plan in place so that the following year you don't go into the credit card, but you actually go into savings that you put in place for it.
I mean, companies are also quite to blame when it comes to this, because during this time of the year, they go on these huge marketing campaigns and drives, and that absolutely drive everyone crazy. How do we avoid that consumerism as people in order not to fall for those marketing gimmicks?
Yeah, I must be honest, I think you're 100% hit the nail on the head with that one. I mean, the amount of SMSs I've got to extend my Woolies card, or, go overdraft in place, or whatever the case may be, it's been annoying. And I think the only way to do that is by having a proper plan in place. So in a holistic financial planning process, we put money in a spending account that you can spend on a holiday. You can't just spend on your holiday. You can just splurge it. But if you have that proper plan in place, then I can take money and I can spend it and I don't feel bad about it. But I'm not taking from my other pockets. So what that means is I have a retirement pocket, I've got an education pocket, I've got a kind of a holiday spending pocket. So when I take money out of there, it doesn't really matter. I've made provision for that. And I think that's the only way you can kind of prevent this enticing yourself to extend your credit on your overdraft, or extend your credit, or even create an overdraft or a new credit card, is by having a proper plan in place and then budgeting for that, so that you start that saving process in January and not in December.
But Bartho, many South Africans will say we're living from hand to mouth, and there isn't that extra for us to be able to put away in order for us to splurge at the end of the year.
Yeah. The fact of the matter then, in that case, I'm 100% correct. Before this, I've owned restaurants and understand that completely, working with employees that go, you know what, I only have X amount to work with. The problem is that you're spending the money anyway and you're going to have to pay it back anyway. So, the kind of mindset has to change from a consumer to say, I am living hand to mouth, but I'm going to, if I'm spending additionally, I have to pay it back at an interest rate. So if I'm spending it now and paying it back, or if I'm saving before, both ways you're going to be doing it. So putting a plan in place again for me is quintessential for that. If it's 50 Rand a month, then put 50 Rand a month away. We often find that we live after debit orders. So the funeral plan that you've got in place, the life cover that you've got in place, whatever the case may be that you've got in place, you kind of, whatever's left over, I live off. So if you put that as part of the plan, I think that you can be able to mitigate against this urge of overspending in December, because, like I said, both ways you're going to have to pay this back. If you pay it before or pay it after. The only difference in paying it after is you're obviously paying it off at an interest rate, and you're paying off more than you would have.
Of course. And of course, we've seen a lot of South Africans in the phenomena of stokvels, where they save up together during the year, and at the end of the year, we see them buying groceries, and that also gives that fulfillment of splurging, but of course, on things that you're able to use throughout the year.
Yeah. I think obviously some good stokvels out there, and I think the ones that work well. I've seen the benefits of that. Like I said, I've owned restaurants before this. Just see the benefits of having a bit of a lump sum that comes in, that you're able to buy those things that you won't afford just on your monthly income. So at least then a little lump sum that comes in. If your month falls on December, that's fine. But obviously in stokvels, it works a bit more of every person has a time that they get paid. There's definitely a benefit of that lump sum coming in. I think those are good things to do. And that lump sum is definitely the same. What you're saying, what I say what I've always said to the people is, if you're putting that money away on a monthly basis, you'll have the lump sum somewhere along the line. The tragedy is that, we're almost our worst enemy when it comes to this, is when there's money available somewhere, I find a reason to, or people find a reason to spend it on something. Whereas just to live within our means and try and mitigate that, it's a better process or a better way of going about it.
So, Bartho, throughout this conversation, you've emphasized planning and how we really should plan for our lives in the year. What other habits would you give as advice for us to sort of pick up within the year so that we don't find ourselves in this Christmas craze and splurging at the end of the year?
Sure. I think planning is obviously one thing that I kept on saying. The other one is living within your means. There's a certain means that you know that you're going to be earning. If you earn X or you earn whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter what you're earning. You know what that amount is. So if you live in your means, then you're able to then put some things in place. And so then not just about saving, but if you're living in your means, then obviously everything kind of works out. If that's 5,000 Rand a month or 300 Rand a month, it's the same type of principle. Obviously, the cost of living is completely different in each way, but it's definitely just, the other big factor is living within our means and not looking at somebody else and going, I also want to earn that, or I also want to own that, or I also want to spend on this. And I think that's quite a difficult thing to do nowadays with our kind of instant gratification society that we have, that we look at the people that are around us and we kind of want what they have, but we can't always afford what they do.
Most certainly. Bartho, thank you so much for your time and for your advice. And I'm hoping many are not going to go out splurging and not finding themselves in those January woes. Thank you for your advice and for joining us this evening. That was financial planner Bartho De Vries speaking to us about that Christmas splurge.